Tommy Curran, how we doing today?
OJ Mayo. The hell.
I was like, where is this call going? OJ Mayo. But yeah, eventually figured it out. Tom, nice to have you on today. Let's go ahead and start with the Mike Vrabel of it all, as he has now been installed as the head coach, and more so than that, it seems like he's going to be kind of the CEO of this team. Is that fair to say? Is that how you'd characterize what his role is going to be here? Schefter said he's going to be the man. You've basically said he's going to be the man. That's it, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Me, the preamble. Let's cut to the chase here.
Okay.
He is the capo de tutti capo. And I think that we have a tendency, whether it be on television, radio, or even in your private conversation with friends, to theorize that, oh, boy, who's got the hammer? Who's the last guy? Who's got the final word? And I think that teams try to avoid that to get to a point where there's rancor. And I know we can point to the situation with John Robinson and Mike Vrabel in Tennessee with A.J. Brown. But if you really look closely at that situation, Vrabel was in constant contact with A.J. Brown about trading him to Philadelphia because it became untenable to get a contract done. His disgust wasn't with necessarily John Robinson overruling him. It was disgust with having to move on from him for whatever constraints. So guys don't generally get to the point where they're at each other's throats. And we certainly hear of times when it happened. Bill Parcells here overruled by his staff making the right call, by the way, on Terry Glenn. But it generally doesn't get to that point. So Vrabel does, I believe, have final say, but it's with support. That's my best understanding of Elliot Wolf's role. Support. What do you need, Mike? I'm going to provide that to you.
Tom,
and he will do that.
Tighten up, because I'm about to blow smoke.
No kidding.
Yeah, no, I thought you got the most interesting piece of audio from Monday out of Mike Vrabel in your stand-up with him. The comment that I'm paraphrasing a little, but basically there were some limitations that prevented Elliot from investing totally in personnel. Then I watched you on TV admit, I don't really know what that word investment meant there, because I didn't know exactly what he meant. Have you been able to dig a little deeper, ascertain now what the hell that meant?
Yeah, I get some clarity, and it had nothing to do with finances, more to do with so many people in their first year in their positions that people were spread thinly, and Wolf was as well. Again, as I said when we discussed this briefly the other day, doesn't excuse Chukwuekorafo or Caden Wallace. Why did I mention him? He's fine. Or Chukwuekorafo or
KJ Osborne.
Yes, thank you. Caden Wallace is fine. I'm not slandering him yet. But it does explain that there were a lot of people in their first year in their positions, Elliot Wolf included, Gerard Mayo included. So it kind of went, in hindsight, the way we feared it might. I remember talking to my guy, right, Mike Reese, and you're a guy too, Mike Reese. And he looked at me with that Reese-ian face on. He goes, how do you think this is going to go? I said, it might be pretty tough. We all kind of suspected it might be, and it was.
Yep. Okay. Well, I mean, I think that if you I wasn't
Did
sure.
I answer that question?
He caught you with one of those pauses
I wasn't
again,
sure if that was a
Arcand.
pause you were going to keep going or not.
But did I answer that question on the investment?
Yeah, because I think some
it was
people...
an investment of time.
Right. Some people wondered if it was just finance, and immediately their connection is, oh, he's got limitations put in place by Robert and Jonathan. The Crafts were imposing some sort of limitations, and I think it's good to clear that up if that wasn't the case. I think that's important.
No, he was spread very thin. And again, and I think that there is probably a continued, well, it wasn't us. We gave him the players. They just couldn't coach him. That goes on that is certainly, it's probably true to a degree. You're just not supposed to say it.
Yeah, you're not supposed to say it.
Right.
Especially when you hired some of the coaches on that side of the ball, Elliot.
Good point.
Right.
With that in mind, when you're trying to strike a balance between the dictatorial way that Bill Belichick sort of ran everything and the collaborative way of Gerard Mayo, how do you strike that balance with a big personality like someone like Mike Vrabel?
You hope that Mike is amenable to doing it. You hope that Mike has the emotional IQ to be able to understand that when he yields the floor is yielded to you, and you should step up, with some courage, make your points. And I think that as much as Elliot Wolf looks, like a deer in the headlights when he is at the podium, he must have some acumen. I mean, people speak very highly of him. We don't see the best of him at the podium, but I'm sure that he can confidently speak about the things that he believes in after the amount of time he spent in the league. He doesn't have a lot of pelts on the wall for great successes, but, I would imagine that Mike would be the one who allows people to say, all right, I know I got a big personality and people don't want to get pooped on by me, but I have to give them the latitude and room to do their jobs. And that's where I think there's a big difference. There's an ongoing comparison to Bill Parcells this week. Bill was kind of a bully. I don't think Vrabel's necessarily a bully because he does a lot of it with a smile on his face. And he also seems to be less of an angle guy than the two Bills who have preceded him here as head coach of the Patriots. I really do think he's authentic. And not a guy whose loyalty will depend upon what you can do for him.
So I wasn't going to ask you this, but you just struck a nerve when you brought up the comparisons because they've been everywhere. A comparison I've made, which is a little bit of a stretch because this guy was never a head coach, but is Dante Scarnecchia, who's a guy that could bully the hell out of people, but then also they loved him. They cried about him. They wanted to hug him. They would do anything for him. Do you think there's anything to maybe sort of that comparison?
Yeah, because Dante could be, as we know, an exceptionally gentle and kind individual with those, nice Italian brown eyes. Oh, he's so nice. And then you hear him on the field.
Oh, my God.
Just absolutely demolishing Gronk and Hernandez in their first training camp. It was hysterical. Not hysterical. It was like, that was kind of funny, actually. But, I think that's a good comp. But I think Mike is unique. And they haven't had a coach quite like him because he was a player and a very talented player. And I think that his empathy that he shows to players in terms of what he was talking about the other day is very genuine. That said, he is going to be a bear for these guys in their first 6 months on the job. He's not going to be Mr. Oh, really? Oh, your kid's he's got a dance recital. Okay, you don't have to come in. I just you got a family crisis. Take whatever time you need, but you're not going to bail out because your wife has a dentist appointment and the kids need a sitter. Figure that out.
Yeah. We're talking with Tommy Curran, NBC Sports Boston. Tom, is there now or is there about to be any kind of major shakeups in the front office or maybe even above that with this team?
I don't think they'll be major. No, I think that there's speculation about different individuals perhaps leaving. Robin Glazer, who has constantly had her role overstated, I think is kind of a symbolic individual to talk about the Kraft's meddling. She's a contracts person, a salary cap person, what do they call that when you have to comply? Oh, compliance person. More than anything else.
Cracked himself up, too.
I think that, I led myself right to it. She always had been, and she did those things for Bill. And during the period of time, she felt overlooked, I believe, over the course of Bill Belichick's tenure. So she had hoped that things would be a little different after Bill left and she'd get a little bit more credit and a little bit more of a forward-facing opportunity. And in so doing, I think she put herself out there as being a mover and a shaker with the football team. And when you say that, I think you have to be intuitive if you're an individual to understand that people only care about the football team vis-a-vis the X's and friggin' O's and the wins. They don't care that much about the contracts, only as it affects the on-field product. So when the on-field product sucks, anybody who poked their head up and said, hey, I'm part of this, is going to get blamed, especially if you have the narrative here that is longstanding. The Crafts tend to be meddlers. And this is another individual who now can be perceived as meddling. And Bill Belichick knew and knows that bringing up Robin Glazer is a tremendous opportunity to kick the Crafts in the shins. And Bill's within his rights. He's been kicked in the shins multiple times in the last 2 years by the Crafts. Not that he didn't deserve it, but it got overboard. So Robin Glazer became a chew toy in the mix for these two sides. And I don't know if that's going to be a role that she continues in, whether by her volition or the team, or probably by her volition, because I think she does a lot of the poop work in there that nobody else has ever really done, and she would be a loss in that regard.
Tom, yesterday I asked Adam Schefter on here an open-ended question about the offensive coordinator search, and I thought it was kind of interesting. The only name he brought up was Josh McDaniels. So is that telling, or is that sort of a bag job yet again? Is Josh McDaniels going to be the OC?
I would imagine so, and that's based on no conversations with – no, I mean – it's based on no current conversations.
Yep.
Josh has opportunities, I think, throughout the league and throughout professional football. So we'll see what he ends up deciding to do. I think the Patriots are going to have options, too. They could go and get Nick Caley. They could go and get Phil Perry mentioned a guy to me earlier today. He was the quarterback's coach
Wes
last
Phillips.
year with
No.
What was the name again?
Wes Phillips.
Yeah, QB coach with Tennessee?
Nope. Different guy.
Okay. Charles, I believe. He was in
Charles
Stadium
London? Charles London.
Yes.
Yeah, I used to sit right outside his door. I shared a cube. Right, nice guy.
Oh, yeah, you were talking about him.
Nicest guy ever.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, he spent 20 years going from a stadium guy. He played football at Duke.
Yep.
He was a stadium guy with the Patriots. And Phil mentioned him to me. He's like, you heard of this guy, Charles London?
Yeah.
So, looking him up. So
I'm rooting for him. That'd be a great story. He used to be like setting up contracts, and now concerts, and now he'd be like running the offense. That'd be the greatest story ever.
Well, and I think that you have to be hypersensitive to the way the fan base reacts to that, and you want to do the solid. He's not Don Law Promotions. He did play football at a high level at Duke, and he's been a coach for 20 years. So I think people go, we got a concert guy running it.
It's like Bill bringing in the lacrosse coaches. It's like kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
So
it'd be creative.
But I think it's Josh. I think Josh makes the most sense, and I think that Arcand kicks back on that because he's like he wants somebody a little more novel and plugged in. Is that correct, Christian?
Yeah, basically. It's just someone who's, maybe going to take him in a different direction, and someone who's not just in their Rolodex and someone they're familiar with, because I feel like they've fallen into that pattern a lot. And I also wonder, Tom, he may be someone that would jump at a job like this, but despite Drake Maye being here, this was still a bottom offense in the NFL last year. Is it how much more of an attractive destination would you say it is for a potential offensive coordinator now as opposed to last year?
Probably 90% more attractive. I bet they wouldn't have the head coach they have right now if it wasn't for Drake Maye. You still had Bailey Zappi running around out there, or Jacoby Brissett, or Mack. It would not be as attractive a destination. You have a guy who's got the potential, has at least shown glimpses of being a player who could be a top 7, top 5 quarterback and a perennial Pro Bowler. That's the hardest position. I'm not telling anybody anything they don't know. Hardest position to fill. They appear to have capably filled it.